about Avion Inc. and the issue that they're having with their supplier, Foster Technologies, and how I think they should go about solving the problem. Avion Inc.'s procurement managers received a report explaining some performance issues with Foster Technologies. They aren't meeting lead times and they are having some issues with the products that are being received. Initially, the procurement managers placed the blame on Foster Technologies until another procurement manager who had recently been to the site explained that Avion maybe was asking too much of Foster. Initially, Foster explained that they could only produce 2,500 units a month, but Avion was placing orders for 4,000 units and was asking for a 10-day lead time instead of a 2-week lead time. Also, Foster tried to communicate these issues with Avion. Per the contract, they communicated with the materials management group, so the procurement group wasn't receiving the message. So initially, their first reaction was that they needed to dump Foster and switch suppliers. But switching suppliers is obviously a time-consuming and costly process, and should probably be reconsidered. According to the textbook, development times are shortening 30 to 50% every 5 years, so supplier evaluation and selection has to keep up with that. Also, when you switch suppliers, you have to deal with supply chain disruptions, and that's obviously very costly. It involves part shortages and production and quality issues. Another factor that Avion has to consider is the risk factor in single sourcing their contract with Foster. There are a lot of obvious cons to single sourcing, and that would be supplier control and bargaining, and the potential for supply disruption if Foster Technologies were to go out of business, or like what happened with Toyota when the factory burned down and Toyota had to work with other automotive dealers to get the parts that they needed. So Avion has to assess the risk and decide whether it's beneficial for them to continue to work with Foster or not. If they do decide that it's beneficial, then Avion has to continue to work to build their relationship with Foster. There are a lot of benefits to having a good relationship with a supplier, including lower costs and idea feedback and other benefits that make the relationship mutually beneficial for both parties involved. But in order for that to happen, Avion has to hold up their end of the deal, which they didn't do in this case. So Avion has to do some internal work to figure out what went wrong and how they can fix it, and hopefully convince Foster Technologies that they can be a good customer. So it works both ways. So moving forward, the best idea, if they can mend the relationship, is to continue working with Foster and follow this following action plan to fix the problem and move forward. So the first step would be to evaluate the risk of a single source contract, and then the second step would be to decide whether to continue working with Foster. So if they've come to the conclusion that Foster is still a good company to work with and that they want to continue their relationship with Foster, then they move to the next step, which, assuming Foster is still a viable supplier that they want to work with, they have two options at this point based on their results from the risk analysis. And the first one would be to continue to work with Foster and solely Foster, and communicate with them about what they need, and potentially ramp up production and Foster's capabilities so that they can meet Avion's needs. The second option would be to continue to work with Foster but not use them as a single supplier, and to start the process for evaluating and selecting another supplier. So while Avion initially thought that they were going to be dumping Foster as a supplier, my action plan indicates that it's probably a better idea for them to continue to work with Foster, whether that's working with them to get what they need or to continue to work with them, but also another supplier at the same time. Avion needs to decide quickly, though, what they're going to do in order to avoid disruption and more potential issues with the products that they're receiving from Foster, and they also need to move quickly so they don't continue to deteriorate their relationship with Foster Technology.